So let's go ahead and get started. I see a lot of familiar faces, so thanks for coming back. I appreciate that. It's cool. Hopefully you guys have learned a few things along the last two presentations, and I think right now the plan for next weekend is we're going to review the first three presentations, so base training, endurance, and this presentation as well. And then we can do a longer question and answering and kind of just address all the issues or questions, and hopefully help you guys come out of here with a nice kind of action plan and feeling good about going into spring coming up, although it feels like spring today. Actually, this weekend's been amazing. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so today we're going to talk about strength training and food timing. So we'll talk the strength training portion first, then we'll transition into food timing, and I'll have kind of an intro to food timing as well, so you'll know what to expect. But today we're going to talk about strength training. We're going to learn why, a little bit of the science behind strength training, and as well as, is this thing making that weird noise? Is it? No. Okay. And as well as the science behind strength training, and then some exercises that we can do, and I'll kind of demonstrate a little bit of stuff, and then also answer some questions about how to do it and give you some options and things like that. Okay? Cool. And by the way, did everybody come to the last two, or who's new? We got a few new. Okay, cool. So my name is Steve. I studied nutritional sciences and chemistry at the University of Arizona. I work at Lifetime Fitness, where I do nutrition coaching, strength training, and metabolic coaching, which is it means endurance coaching, so coaching endurance athletes, a lot like you guys. And so that's kind of my background. I've been racing triathlon for about 10 years now. I've raced every distance. I prefer kind of that half Ironman distance, but I have done some fulls, and yeah, it's kind of a little bit about me. I played baseball in college, so I've been involved in sports my whole life. It's kind of what I do. All right, so why do we need to strength train? You know, a lot of cyclists think they need to be as light as possible on the bike, and that adding muscle is going to make you heavy and kind of slow you down, which is a valid concern. But with the right type of strength training, you can increase your strength, your total output, without increasing any body weight, and possibly even decreasing your body weight. In the last presentation, we learned that fat loss is a combination of metabolism and hormone expression. And when we think about hormone expression, there's three ways to impact it. One way is nutritionally, and we covered that a little bit. The other way is through strength training, and I'm going to talk about a study done at the University of New Mexico. In a few slides I'll talk about that, and it'll explain the hormone expression part. And then we have metabolism factors, which can be influenced by your endurance training and as well as nutrition. And so that's why we strength train. If we're doing a proper plan, we have something set up, what we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to improve our body's stability. So if you have poor stability on the bike, you're going to have a loss of power. So for example, if you're cycling and you're pedaling and your knee is constantly bowing in, it can mean two things. One, it means your bike fit is off. You need to come see Pat and get a bike fit. The other thing it can mean is that there's a muscular imbalance, and perhaps your glutes aren't quite working right. There's several glutes. You have three glute muscles: glute med, glute minimus, gluteus maximus. Maximus is the big, the minimus is on the side, and the med is right on the side. The glute med is a little muscle that connects to your TFL and IT band, and it's responsible for lateral stability. So if that muscle is underactive and you're pedaling, your knee will dip in as you pedal, and that can cause a loss in power. Not only loss in power, also eventually you'll have some sort of overuse injury. We've all had a little knee pain on the bike, and it's a combination of the two things: stability muscles as well as bike fit. So assuming your bike fit is correct, and you still have some sort of dip in your knee, could be a sign to do some strength training. I'll talk about how we can fix that. The other part, poor stability, loss of power, your posture on the bike. So if you're on your bike, on the hoods, and you have, say, just not quite strong enough core, and it's time to get up a hill, go hard, and your core is not strong. So your core is made up of abdomen, low back, hamstrings, glute, quads, and your hip flexors. So those four things are your core. And your hips are suspended in space by those four muscles. And so if one of them's not as strong, the other ones have to compensate, and so on and so forth. So if you're pedaling and your core is not functioning right, or it's not strong, that means that you're going to get some rocking in the hips, your upper body's going to sway around, and that's just a loss of power. Also, it's could lead to an injury later down the road. So strength training can help correct that, also bike fit as well. And then I have a little statement here that says that our postural norm will be magnified under workload. So a lot of us sit throughout the day. We have a desk job, and we do that, and eventually, over time, we start to round forward, right? If we keep rounding forward, that's a sign that the muscles on our back are not working quite right, and the muscles up front are tight, so they're pulling us forward. So through strength training, what we're going to do is pull ourselves back. We'll talk about some exercises to do that. And if you're on your bike, and in daily life right now, you're walking around town, you're doing things, and you have poor posture, right? So you're bent forward a little bit, maybe your glutes aren't quite working. Under load, those posture problems are going to be amplified a lot, because right now there's relatively no load, so as you start to pick up the pace, your posture is going to degrade, because the effort you're putting in is going to pull you into a poorer position. So you need to strengthen those muscles to hold yourself back. How many of us riding have caught ourselves hands in the hood and our shoulders come up, right? You feel that, right? Late in the ride too. So that's a sign that you have some weak muscles in your back, because you should be able to pull your shoulders down and back and ride in a good position. And just some easy strength training can help correct that. Also, so in terms of performance, by strength training, the muscular time to fatigue improves, so you can go longer before you fatigue, especially in situations like a sprint or like a time trial. You know, short bursts of speed, things like that. Your time to fatigue will improve through strength training. And probably the most important, I'd say stability is most important. Second most important is motor unit recruitment. And so our muscles have motor units in them. So our muscle fibers are woven together. And say just to do some math, say my hamstrings have 100 muscle fibers in them. And I'm riding my bike, I should be using my hamstring quite a bit to pedal. It has 100 muscle fibers, and I pedal hard. It doesn't mean that I'm using all 100 muscle fibers. So you might only be using 10%, 20%, 50%. But through strength training, proper strength training, we can increase the amount of muscle fibers we use. So, therefore, we didn't necessarily make the muscles any bigger, but we made them work harder. So that's muscle unit recruitment, and we'll talk about when that muscle unit recruitment comes into play in strength training, because it's not in every phase. And then, like I said before, strength training plays a critical role in hormone expression and bone density. So a sad little fact is that cycling or riding our bike does not improve bone density. It actually is degrading bone density a little bit. So we need to get some load-bearing activity in there to help with bone density. And strength training is a great way to do it. So let's talk a little bit about the science here. There's essentially two different types of muscle fibers, type 1 muscle fiber and type 2 muscle fiber. If you picture Usain Bolt and then Kara Goucher is a marathon runner. She's very lean and small and long, lean muscles. Usain Bolt is very large, big, bulky muscles. Kara Goucher is an example of type 1 muscle fiber. She's mostly type 1 muscle fiber. Usain Bolt is mostly type 2 muscle fiber. And you can impact the way those muscles work through different types of strength training. Now, it's important to know that, like, for example, in my hamstring example, 100 muscle fibers in there, it's a mix of type 1 and type 2. So it's not all 100% type 1 and not all 100% type 2. It's some percentage of the two, and that's genetic. So we can't change that. But what we can do is make sure that we train both types to make them work together. Okay, so type 1 muscle fibers, they get lots of blood flow. Okay, so this comes back to the marathon runner and sprinter. So type 1, endurance type muscle fibers. They get lots of blood flow. When I talked about base training, the muscles that have mitochondria density, the type 1 muscle fibers are the ones that improve type mitochondria density. And they have a large capacity to do work. Since they're getting tons of oxygenated blood, they can keep working over and over and over again. They don't fatigue. Type 2 muscle fibers are very fast production of energy. So they are 10-second bursts of energy, 15-second bursts of energy. They're much larger, a lot stronger, and that's when you look at Usain Bolt. He's really fast, explosive kind of person. Kara Goucher is also pretty fast, but she can go a long time. And so, or if we think of some sprinters on the bike, like a track cyclist, these guys have enormous bodies. They're very big, and they can go very fast. And then Chris Froome is very small and tiny, and he can go pretty fast, but not as fast as they can, but he can go a long time. And it's simply a result of the way you train your muscles. So through strength training, our goal is to increase our force production through motor unit recruitment and maintain the same weight, or even drop weight. Unless you're, say, underweight, you really need to increase muscle, then our goal would be a little bit different. But let's just assume to improve our cycling capability, we want to increase force production, reduce weight, and we can do that through strength training. So, what can you do? So how can you make this work for you? There's several phases of strength training, but to simplify it, I've broken it down into 3 different blocks. There's a stability block, there's a muscular endurance block, and then there's a power block. So we have a range for our stability block of 1 to 5 weeks, because that is very dependent on where you're at. So some people may need to spend more time doing stability work, and some people might not need as much time doing it because they have a past of, they've done athletic things in their past, or they have already done some sort of base building in the weight room. So if you think about it, through cycling, we've got sort of our base building phase, we've got our tempo and interval training phase, and then we've got like our peak phase. And that's how strength training can work. And you would start in your stability block, move to your strength endurance block, and then move to your power block. And the reason why is if you jumped straight into the power block and you had poor stability, again, under load, your body wouldn't behave like it should. There would be some wiggle where there shouldn't be, and it could result in an injury. And so you want to progress through the motions in the right order. So what you do in the weight room, stability phase, 2 or 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps at approximately 50 to 75% of your maximum. You can kind of guess that on your own. So if you were doing like a deadlift or something and your max was 200 pounds, then 50% of that is 100 pounds. And so you do 3 sets of 10, 2 sets of 10 in that phase. The next phase, the goal is to increase the muscle density, so get more muscle fibers produced. And you do that through 3 to 4 sets, 6 to 10 reps, and you would increase that weight. So now if your max was 200 pounds, you're now 80% of 200 pounds is, I don't know, 160. So 160 pounds, 6 to 10 reps. Do that for 2 to 4 weeks. And then we increase to our power phase, where we decrease the amount of reps down to 3 to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, something really light or low amount of reps, but we'll do 5 sets, so several sets of work. And the goal there is to increase your total power, motor unit recruitment, that's when all these good athletic things happen. So it takes a few weeks to get through all those phases in order to start to have those benefits. This one, in that phase there, you're lifting very heavy, 88% of your max, 95% of your max, and it's pretty fun in my opinion, but you can't start there, you need to progress to it. So in that phase, that's when all the fat loss starts to happen, that's when your athletic performance starts to increase, and you feel pretty good because it's not very strenuous, it's only strenuous for a few seconds. So it's like quick bursts of work and then lots of rest. So the study I read recently by the University of New Mexico, they took female athletes and they had, it was a 24-week study. And so they had 4 groups. One group did circuit style training, so picture like a gym with a fitness aerobics instructor and they're doing like a barbell class. And then the other 3 groups followed a periodization like this. So then each week they tested their hormones. So they tested for testosterone production and human growth hormone production. Both of those hormones are responsible for decreasing body fat and increasing strength, among a whole bunch of other things. The group, after 24 weeks that did the barbell style strength training class, there was no change in human growth hormone or testosterone, and the group that followed the periodization model had a significant change. So it's important that you progress your stress level. So volume. So if we take reps times sets times weight, that whatever that number is volume. And so through this periodization, you would increase that volume over time, and that leads to an increase in testosterone, increase in HGH, and a loss of body fat, and not necessarily weight. So a lot of people think, well, I don't want to weight lift because I don't want to get big and bulky. True, but in order to get big and bulky, you need to strength train probably 4 days a week, 5 days a week, do not very much cardiovascular work at all, and train in a specific way. You would probably spend 10 weeks, 12 weeks in that 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 10 reps. So you would spend a lot of time there, and not as much time in stability and not as much time in the power phase. So that's why kind of that middle phase is the shortest duration really, and then we go straight into building kind of the muscle recruitment and faster motions. So there's a lot to it, but if you can set it up sort of like this, you can get through it pretty easily. There's tons of information out there on it, and you can come talk to me and I can help point you in the right direction too. Yes?
Are you ever reassessing what your max is, or is that what defines the period?
Sure, yeah. So he's talking about reassessing his max, and yes, you would eventually. So you would start out with your max, and then after you followed through a whole program, you would reassess it, to reset the value, and that's how you would keep progressing. So we'll talk about that. Get to that right now. So what can you do? Work on your stability first. So figure out, work on stability type of exercises. Lots of things. One-legged, using bands, really lightweight, really controlled motion. So everything takes 3 seconds. 3 seconds down, 2 seconds up. So you're not moving really quickly, but you're intentionally slowing yourself down so that you have really good form. Focus on total body movements. So when you're in the gym, avoid using machines that are like isolating machines. So think of like the guys doing the curls on the curl machine. It's really just isolating your bicep. It's not doing anything athletically. So focus on total body. So motions where both feet are on the ground, you're doing something. If both feet are on the ground, it's going to be total body because your core has to work, your legs are engaged. So that's a good way to do it. And then, you only need to strength train 1 or 2 days a week. That's it. 1 or 2 days a week for about 45 minutes, and that's plenty of time. That's all you need to do. And I've got a sample workout coming up next. You want to pay attention for some muscle imbalances. It's really hard to do on your own, but if you have some muscle imbalances, there's ways to train around it. But just making sure that when you're doing an exercise, you're getting full range of motion, you're under control. control, you know how to do it. If you don't, there's tons of professionals out there to help you figure out how to do it, things like that. There's lots of good videos that you can watch and learn. Buddy up with somebody to help you look at your form. Maybe even if you're doing something and you're not sure if you're doing it right, have it videotaped and then compare it to someone else online or something like that. Those are good ways to do it. Or obviously get with somebody, a professional that knows how to do it, and they can help teach you how to do it. So what can you do in the gym? So here's a sample workout. So show up to the gym or the rec center or whatever it is, your home gym. Get some sort of warm-up in for 5 minutes or so, walking, a little spin on the bike, something like that, just so that you get your blood flowing, because you don't want to start with just kind of tight muscles. Get the blood flowing. There's a stretch out there called a couch stretch, and so what that does, you guys can kind of look that up, but I can demonstrate later. You're going to stretch out your hip flexor. So if your hip flexor is overly tight, and the reason why is because a lot of people spend most of their days sitting, driving, flying on airplanes, traveling, whatever it is. As you sit, your hip flexors become shorter. And so if your hip flexors become short, your hips rotate forward. If your hips rotate forward, your hamstrings get stretched. If your hamstrings are stretched, they won't fire. So what we want to do is lengthen our hip flexors so that our hips can sit level. So you don't want to have your hips forward, you want to get them rotated back nice and flat, and then you can start to use your hamstring and glute normally. That's why you start with that couch stretch, because it inhibits your hip flexor from being dominant, and then you can use your hamstrings. Monster walk is an exercise with a rubber band between your feet or around your ankles, and you lateral walk. So when you're doing the monster walk, what you're doing is strengthening the glute med, which is that muscle that improves knee stability through cycling, right? So you can do that. So if you're in the stability phase, you'll do that 3 times, 10 steps, 12 steps one way, 12 steps the other way. If you're in the power phase, you don't need to do it nearly as much because you've done the stability work, but you can still keep it in your warm-up. Do 5 one way, get a heavier band. Glute bridge, so laying on your back, driving your hips forward. This is a great way to engage your glute, engage your hamstring, because when we're cycling, we hear the term quadzilla all the time, and that isn't necessarily a good thing to have giant quads. We should also have really strong hamstrings and really strong glutes, because as you cycle through, it's not just your quad working. Because your quad is only working in this position, kind of the 4 o'clock position. It powers down, but your hamstring and glute are doing the rest of the work. So you're missing a whole 65 degrees of your cycling stroke by not having strong glutes and strong hamstrings. So we want to make sure we're balanced. Glute bridge is a great way to start with that. I like the deadlift. So deadlift you can do obviously with the bar. That's pretty advanced. If you're not ready for that, start with 2 dumbbells, 1 dumbbell in each hand, and just start working on the deadlift. There's a whole bunch of tutorials online all over the place, places you can learn how to do that. Start really simple and then progress. And as you get better and better at it, you'll get more confidence in how to do it. But why the deadlift? It's a very complex movement. As we do a deadlift, every muscle in our body is working. Our calves are working, our feet are working, our quads are working, hamstrings, glutes, low back, our core, our biceps, our triceps, our mid-back. Every single muscle in our body is working. And so that sort of unites all the muscles in our body so that they can speak to each other. So what happens through strength training, especially an exercise like that, is the amount of neurological connections to the muscles actually increases. If you have more neurological connections to your muscles, that means that when you're doing something like riding a bike, your brain can speak to your muscles better. If that brain can speak to your muscles better, that means you have more motor unit recruitment and you have better stability, better performance, and better functioning body. Single leg deadlift is a stability exercise, so you got a dumbbell, one leg, and you're going down, back up. You're going to wiggle around all over the place, but eventually as you get stronger, you won't wiggle as much. When you stop wiggling, that means that you can increase the weight, and that also means that it will translate over to the bike, that you'll have stability on the pedal stroke, or the run, or the swim, or playing basketball with your kids, or whatever it is. Now, so we've got some box jumps or front squats, a little variation there. Box jumps is a little advanced. Everybody can do it. If you're not ready for the box jump, then we can do a front squat. So you'll grab a weight, you'll hold it in front of your body, like a dumbbell, a couple dumbbells, and you'll squat with that. There's almost no way to do the front squat wrong. There is a million ways to do a squat with it on your back incorrect. If you hold it in the front, if you have bad form, what's going to happen is you're just going to drop the weights because you can't hold it up. So it'll help actually correct your form for a regular squat. The other advantage to it is as you're holding the weights, what you have to do is the weights are pulling you forward. What your body will do is it will pull it back, right? So now if I'm on a bicycle and I'm constantly hunching forward, I want to work on the muscles that help pull me back, because that's better posture on the bike. And we talked about a little bit before that the better our posture is on the bike, the better our performance will be, because we have stability and not a loss of power. So it's a great way to do it. Lateral stability hold, there's a bunch of ways to do this. Side plank. Otherwise you can get like a cable machine. Cable comes out and you just hold it right in front of you. 30 seconds on each side. Works that your transverse abdominals. So there's several layers of abs. There's 2 layers of abs. There's the rectus abdominis, the six-pack. Underneath that's another set of abs. Those are the abs that are responsible for better posture. They help stabilize. They hook from your hips all the way up to your rib cage. And let's see, so now we got to work a little bit of our back. Close grip pull down, so that would be with the underhand grip, pulling it down. And so what the goal is to pull your shoulder blades down and back. By pulling your shoulder blades down and back, you do it with the underhand grip. So, yep, like that. So when you do it, you have an underhand grip. You're pulling your shoulder blades down and back, because when you're on a bicycle, pull your shoulder blades down and back on a bicycle. And then the same thing, we'll do another exercise to accomplish it. There's a cable machine with a rope, and you're pulling the rope back. Again, working those muscles between your shoulder blades to pull your shoulder blades together. Those muscles there, the mid-trap are the muscles that you're really working chronically underactive in people, and it's just because we sit and we hunch forward. These are the muscles that pull us back. Okay. Do we have any questions there? Does anybody have some questions? Because the next, we're going to move into food timing after that. Okay.
As far as the upper body stuff,
So, yeah, so his question was, as far as the upper body work, can it be supplemented with swimming? Yes, it can. However, the amount of muscle fiber production, like, you're not going to use the same amount. You won't engage any type 2 muscles because it's all aerobic work. So swimming is a great option, but you still need to do a little bit of strength training. Yeah, both would be great. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to move on to food timing. All right, so food timing. It looks like 4 things. We've got the night before, the day of, so night before morning, or unless your event's in the afternoon, during the event and after the event. And so we'll cover those 4 phases. Night before, most of the time we're training or racing in the morning, so we'll pretend that that's what we're doing. The night before serves as a good practice for how race day will go. What you want to do is, if your race is on a Sunday, and in your training plan, your big day is on Sunday, so your 50-mile ride or your 100-mile ride, whatever it is you're training for, the night before that, the goal is to figure out that meal that works for you. it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But what you want to do is find that meal that helps you perform in the morning. So if it's baked potato with a little bit of chicken and some brown rice or something like that, figure it out and then take note of what it is. And then every time you have that big workout, your big key workout, you have that same dinner. And then that way when your race comes, or your big event, you kind of can aim to have that same thing, and you know that that's going to work for you, okay? That way it kind of takes out some of the unpredictability of eating something different the night before. So yeah, and then as you get closer to your event, you know, so if your event's not till June, it's not super critical now to figure that out, but closer and closer and closer, what you want to do is find that meal that works really well for you, and then do that every time before your big day. So now, is carbohydrate loading really a thing? Because I hear it a lot. People are like, oh, do you carb load before whatever it is? And the answer is no, it's not real. Your body can hold a certain amount of carbohydrates in it. It can't go to 110%. So it just gets full. So unless you're 100% depleted, like you did a 100-mile ride the day before at a pretty high intensity, there's no need to go ahead and eat a whole bunch of pasta and a whole bunch of carbohydrates the night before an event, because you just need to eat your normal meal. It doesn't need to be anything extra, it doesn't need to be anything special, because we can only get to 100%. So that's the only goal. So there's no need to kind of change it up before a marathon or before a big day. The guys in the Tour de France, they need to eat a huge meal the night before, because the day of, they just rode 27 miles per hour for 106 miles with 10,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's a totally different situation. We're not doing that. So don't worry about carbohydrate loading, just have a normal dinner before your event. Yes?
I'm going to do the double triple bypass.
Uh-huh.
Probably need to carbo load after the first night.
Yeah, you probably need to eat a little more food. Yeah, absolutely. In that situation, if you have back-to-back days, your dinner is going to be big, but your appetite's going to tell you that.
My appetite's going to be big.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, but you do need to eat an extra amount of food, yeah, for that, in that situation, yes. All right. Day of event, so this is, it's the morning of or the afternoon of your event. The longer before your event, the more you can eat. So if your ride starts at 7 a.m. and you woke up at 6 a.m., you can't eat a whole lot. You need to eat a smaller amount. But if you have 3 hours before, 2 hours before, 1 hour before, I set up a couple different situations. So the closer to the event, the more simple your meal needs to become. So if you have 1 hour, you're probably eating something pretty light, maybe a piece of fruit, maybe even a sports drink, or maybe like just a bagel or something like that. If you have that 2 hour window, you can eat more complex meal, like have some eggs with it or some peanut butter. And then if you have 3 hours, you can eat just kind of a typical full meal. And that's just to give your body time to kind of absorb and break down the more complex stuff. Let's see. We think about kind of how much we should eat. It's relative to you. So there's not a kind of a magic amount, but if you have 3 to 4 hours before the event, you're going to be somewhere in that 500 to 1,000 calories window, depending on who you are. If I had 4 hours before an event, I would probably eat closer to that upper range. Much smaller person would probably eat a little closer to that lower range. Looking for meals that have 10 to 20 grams of protein in them. If you're racing, this is the only situation when you want something that has low fiber, because you don't want to have to go to the bathroom while you're racing. The fiber will kind of speed up that process, but this is the only situation. Normally you'd want to have a good amount of fiber in your food, but in this situation, low fiber carbohydrates. And that looks like 150 grams to 300 grams if you're counting. Drink about 24 ounces of water. And then also probably about 15 grams, somewhere in there, of fat would be good. 2 to 3 hours before the event, your meal needs to get a little smaller, so it's probably less than 500 calories, maybe 350 or so. You need to decrease the amount of protein and fat, and then consume more carbohydrates in that window, because the fat and protein slows down digestion, which is a good thing. But in this situation, we want to be fueled up for our ride, so we need to speed up digestion a little bit by consuming less of them. And then if you have a 1 hour window, you need to eat probably mostly sports drink or something really simple, like I said before. 200 calories or so. Yes?
What's your thought about starches, like, UCAN products?
Yeah. So UCAN's a great, fantastic product. Yeah, that works really well inside that 1 hour window. If that's if that's all you have, a little UCAN maybe with some like a little bit of fruit or something like that would set you up pretty good. And you had a question?
What about a smoothie?
Sure, perfect. Be good in that 1 hour window. Because so a smoothie is pretty blended up and broken down, and it's really pretty easy to digest. So, yeah, that'd be great. All right, so in terms of that, there's no magic solution. It's very individualized for all of you. That's why I said to night before is find that meal that works really well for you. And then on the other side, in the morning of, find that meal that works really well for you. Like for me, I usually, if I have a big workout, and that's 4 hour-ish workout, I usually have oatmeal. I put a little bit of peanut butter in it. I stir it up, a little bit of raisins, and then I have some scrambled eggs. And that's usually what I have on my training days, my big training days. And then that way, when I go and I'm traveling, it's pretty easy to mimic that. I might not have the scrambled eggs, but in a hotel room, I can easily get oatmeal, peanut butter, and raisins. It's super easy to do. So figure that out, what works for you. Practice it now. So if your big day is tomorrow, today is the best time to practice that dinner, and then practice that breakfast, and then take note of it. Write it down. How did you feel? And if there was something that you didn't like, adjust your dinner accordingly, adjust your breakfast accordingly. And then once you find that meal, that's it. Just keep that same meal up for that big day. You have 6 other days of the week, have a variety, eat different things, but on that one big day, try and figure out those good meals. And then that way, when race day comes, you don't have to change things up too much, right? You know what to do. Your body likes the predictability of it, and you know that you'll digest it. It's just one thing you can forget about. All right, so during the event, so now you've already had dinner, you've already had breakfast, and you're on your way. If it's 75 minutes or more, this is where it comes into play. If it's 75 minutes or less, you only need water and salt, depending on the heat. If it's not very hot, you don't even need the salt. But if it's really hot, take a little salt. But so we'll assume everybody's talking about something greater than 75 minutes. So what we want to do, the goal of our sports nutrition, for most of us, and I'll say most of us, because if you have a really extremely long event, the goal is a little bit different, like an Ironman. But right now, 5 hour ride, 4 hour ride, 6 hour ride, something like that. The goal is to stabilize blood sugar with the sports nutrition stuff. It's not to replace your calories, because if you're riding at any sort of intensity, you're going to be doing 500, 600 calories an hour is going to be burned. You can't absorb it that fast, because when you're pedaling, blood flows away from your digestion, so it slows down and it limits the capacity for digestion. So you can only take in about 100 to 250 calories. Some professional athletes can take in way more than that, 400, but that's not the norm. Okay, those guys are pros for a reason. We're here. I'm sure most of us can't take in 400 calories per hour. So there's a range there. If you're a bigger person, you can take in a little bit more. If you're a smaller person, take in a little bit less. And then use that as kind of a guideline, adjust as needed. What I do on my ride is I start on the lower end. So I fill up my water bottle. 2 scoops of Scratch Labs is 160 calories. And then I keep a bonk breaker in my pocket. That way, halfway through, if I didn't eat enough and I feel like I'm blood sugar is crashing and I'm not feeling very good, I can eat that bong breaker, but I save that as a kind of a safety blanket, just so I can get home. But I try to just take in my calories and stick to this 100 to 250 calories per hour. Practice. So if your big day, so if you're just a cyclist, you probably have that one big ride a week. That's the time to practice your race day nutrition. Okay, so go into it with that mindset that today I'm practicing my race day nutrition, and plan it out, and then stick to that plan. What I do is I take my clock on my bike computer, and every 15 minutes I plan on drinking, and I usually have my calories in my water bottle, and so I just drink every 15 minutes, and so I try to do about a bottle an hour. If it's really hot, I'm at 2 bottles an hour, and so I have to make those bottles a little bit less calories to adjust for that 160 per hour. Yeah. So the other thing to do if you eat, like if you want to have honey stingers or gels or something like that, the same sort of window. Every 15 minutes you're eating like a part of it, or putting a little bit of gel in your mouth. It's a little harder to do on the 15-minute window because it's kind of silly to take a little bite. Sometimes you can do every half hour or so. But if you put it all in at once, it's a lot of food that goes down into your stomach that has to be digested. So it's easier if you take it in over time. So it's more consistent kind of flow of nutrition, and then which helps regulate your blood sugar even better. And that is how we burn fat, and that's an increase in performance. So sodium and hydration. So over the course of a race or an event or whatever it is, the reason we decrease in performance is mostly hydration and not calories. It's mostly becoming dehydrated, because as blood volume goes down, that's dehydration. Blood volume goes down, our heart has to pump thicker blood. It can't flow as fast, which means less oxygen to our muscles. So that's the limiter. It's almost always hydration and not calories. So you need to take sodium, especially if it's warm, salt pill, something like that, and then just make sure you're hydrated. And at the bare minimum, it's 1 bottle of water per hour. If you're larger, going faster, if it's hot, you're going to be drinking more than that per hour. Okay? So again, just pay attention to that. Say, all right, tomorrow's my big ride. I've got a 2-hour ride. I'm bringing 2 bottles. You better have them all drank by the time you get home, okay? Just make sure you get in the habit of that, because as it becomes more frequent and easier to do, you don't need to think about it anymore. You just go out and ride. Before you know it, you're just drinking frequently throughout the ride, and that'll help your performance greatly. All right, after. So we do want to consume carbohydrate. That's what CHO means, sorry. Carbohydrates and protein within 45 minutes of finishing. There is a window for that, and it really is something. It means something, because that's when your insulin sensitivity is higher. So if insulin sensitivity is better, that means that we have better absorption. So we're looking to get 10 to 25 grams of protein. That's about the maximum amount we can digest at a time. 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrate, and then I think that you should aim to eat real foods. So have something at home, chicken breast on a salad, rice, whatever it is you like to eat. Have something that's natural, normal food. Don't worry about the sports nutrition. But if you don't have time and you're in a rush, the sports nutrition comes into play. There's a number of really great products. They sell we have an Ultragen, which is the perfect blend. It's got protein. It's got about 10, maybe 12 grams of protein, and then it has a lot of carbohydrates in it, and that helps replenish. Because the goal is replenish so that tomorrow I can train again. But I encourage you to aim for real foods. And then, like I said, in time crunch, sports supplements are great. And then if you are a high performance athlete, so that means that you're training hard today, tomorrow's workout's really important as well. The next workout's really important as well. That sports nutrition plays a big role for you. You do need to take it. But if you're not if you don't consider yourself a high-performance athlete, eating real foods will get the job done just as well. All right, so this is something that I wrote a while back. I can't remember when, but it's important to, this is the last slide, and then we're going to talk about, answer some questions, but it's important that we understand this, that the food that we consume is not a breakdown of nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It's a symphony of infinite complexity where all the parts of our food work together to nourish our body, right? So what I mean is, if you have some food in front of you and you're looking at it, nobody sees it as this is carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. It's food. You all see it as food, so it's important to remember that we eat food, okay? So don't think about it as, oh, how many carbs do I need? How much protein do I need? How much fat do I need? It's just food. You need to have good food, so focus on that quality. Don't focus on the quantity, focus on the quality. So if you have something in front of you and you say, this is not a very quality meal, you're going to put it down, make something better, okay? So that's the only thing you really need to remember, is just focus on that quality. It's not the quantity that matters, because they all work, it's a combination of how everything works together. All right, questions? Sir?
Just suppose you're going out for 3 hours.
Yep.
And in that 3-hour time slot, you're going to do maybe 30 minutes of intervals.
Yep.
Pretty high intensity work. How would your hydration and feeding during that 30-minute interval set work into your overall 3-hour ride?
Yeah, so you still stay on that same 100 to 250 calories per hour, drinking a bottle or more. You'd probably drink more than 1 bottle per hour as you're a larger person, so you stay on that same interval. Yeah, doesn't change. Make it easy, okay? So his question was, what about during hard efforts, intervals, things like that? How does that change your nutrition? It doesn't. Your nutrition stays the same, because what we want to do is make it so easy to follow that no matter what, you won't forget what you're doing. So if it's I'm drinking every 15 minutes and I have a salt pill every hour, then you just stick to that rotation the whole time. It's really easy to follow. You can't flub it up. I've seen a lot of people in the longer events like the Ironman. They do the whole bike ride, 2.5 hours in, they haven't had anything to drink. So then what do? Is they need to make up. So they drink it fast. They drink a whole bunch down. They put a whole bunch of food in all at once, big meal. And that stuff just sits there, because it can only absorb at about 100 to 250 calories per hour. So if you take in 600, that's going to take you 3 or 4 hours to digest while you're riding. So that's why I say let's come up with this cycle that you're on and start feeding yourself on an even window so that doesn't happen to you. Okay? Good question. Thank you. Yes?
Is it worth setting the alarm to get up so you can eat 3 to 4 hours?
It is if you are racing a very big event. So if you're doing an Ironman, it's very important. If you have a 5-hour ride, I'd say 2 hours is ample, because you can take in about 300, 400 calories in that 2-hour window. Yeah, it is important, for sure. Definitely. Yes?
Back on the muscle side,
Yeah.
type 1, type 2, is that the same as slow twitch, fast twitch?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yes it is. So his question was type 1, type 2, is that the same as slow twitch and fast twitch? And yes it is. Type 1, slow twitch muscles. Type 2, fast twitch muscles. Correct.
What do you know when you need to take the sodium?
Yeah, so sure. So when I think of hydration, what I do is I look at my pee. So if my pee is dark color, I know I didn't hydrate enough. And so that's an indication I need to take in some sodium and drink more. If I got done with my ride and my pee is lighter color, then I know that I got it right. But you almost always need to take in sodium along with water. It's a great question. So in order for our body to absorb water, if we drink water from the fountain or something we bought and we drink water, our body has to take salt and add it to our stomach. and it has an osmolarity. There's a number associated with that, so it has to have a certain amount of salt in it, potassium and chloride, magnesium, and then it will absorb it once it has the right osmolarity. So water, just in a glass, doesn't have the right osmolarity. We drink it, our body adds salt to it, and then we can absorb it. So if we drink water with salt, it absorbs much faster. Yeah. And then so sodium keeps us hydrated through, it's this principle called water follows solute. So if we take in sodium, sodium gets into our bloodstream, and it pulls water in, and it holds it in there longer. Yeah. Also, there's in muscle contraction, sodium plays a big role. So does calcium and potassium.
You don't really need it under like an hour.
No. 75 minutes is where I'd be, and then also it's very independent. Like whether it's a day, you didn't need to take a lot of sodium, but on a hot day, you do need to take it. Yeah, absolutely. Sir.
So back on the hydration schedule, I try to do 1 bottle an hour. There's a cost. It's getting off the bike.
Sure. So.
What do you consider a normal, good schedule to be balanced?
Yeah. So if you are peeing frequently because you're drinking so much, also a sign that you didn't take in enough sodium. Taking a little more sodium, you won't pee as much. You can definitely overdose on sodium, yes. And I think it's more than 1,000 milligrams an hour. Yeah, you can definitely overdose on it. Yeah.
Well, see, I use regular sea salt.
Uh huh.
I just take a pinch of sea salt, I find it works the rest of the day.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. It's missing some stuff in there that your body will use, but it's okay. Yeah, it's a good option. The sports nutrition products also have calcium, magnesium, potassium, and those are all also salts that we lose through sweat that we need to replace as well. But it helps with hydration just as well.
Some of those are too harsh on my stomach.
Yeah, yeah. So use something that you can tolerate. That's important for sure. Yeah, and it could be also it's harsh on your stomach because you're maybe not taking in enough liquid to dilute it. And you're also smaller, so it might be maybe you only need a salt pill every hour and a half or 2 hours. So finding your tolerance, yeah, certainly is something. Yes, sir.
I usually use just plain water, but like I use Shot Blocks. Is that a good combination?
Shot Blocks has, I think it has a little bit of salt in it there. It's not enough for a really hot day, but if it's working well for you, it really depends on you. So if it's working well, and now we continue to do it. If you suspect that something could be better, then you can make some adjustments. But yeah, it's a good product for sure. It's a great product. Yeah. Yes.
So you said that during the event, the goal was to stabilize blood sugar unless you're doing something longer.
Oh yeah,
What's
yeah.
the goal?
So all right, so super long events, you need to eat because you got to get some calories in because eventually you'll run out of calories. So if you have a really long event, your intensity level is going to be relatively pretty low. So if your intensity is low, you can eat more because blood is available for digestion. So you can eat normal foods on a really long event, like the Dirty Cons is like a 200-mile dirt ride. You got to eat. You have to eat. Professional athletes probably wouldn't, but they're special people. We need to eat some stuff. We need to eat some stuff, especially and if you're doing an Ironman event, you'll have. Is anybody doing like an Ironman? Is that you're doing? Okay, cool. So what you can do is because your intensity is going to be relatively pretty low, unless you're going sub 10 hours. Your intensity is pretty low. So in your special needs bag, keep a couple of bars that you really like and go ahead and eat those because since the intensity is low enough, you can digest normal foods. If intensity increases and you're going much faster, you won't be able to do that. You'll just puke it out. Yeah. Sir.
So for those longer events, should you be eating more every 15 minutes, so to speak, or more?
Nope. So for longer events, should you be eating more every 15 minutes is the question. And the answer is no. It depends on the intensity at which you're racing. As intensity goes up, the amount of digestion goes down. So if your longer event, intensity is, and you're still riding hard, you still can only take in so much per hour. But if your intensity comes down, then you can eat more per hour. But still, 250 an hour, 300 maybe. Yeah, still not a whole lot more. Yeah. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
When you say a bottle, are you talking 16 ounces?
I would say 24 ounces when I talk about a bottle. However, you're not large. You're a smaller woman, so it might be a smaller bottle for you. Yeah, but yeah, figure out that kind of what that is for you. But yeah, 24 ounces an hour or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Bob.
So on like Ride the Rockies, a sponsored ride throughout the week, typically the first aid station will have the pancake guy, pancake arcade. And then there'll be some kind of, like just a whole bunch of different foods. So what's your recommendation? Like, just be real careful, or just do a little, or, it's not a race, it's just you're riding 50 to 100 miles.
Yeah, so he's talking Ride the Rockies. Each aid station has something unique. I did the pedal the plane, so I know exactly what you're talking about. They have like a pancake station and things like that. So the answer is, if you're like trying to ride really hard, then you skip all that stuff and stick to your nutrition plan. However, I would eat smaller amounts at each meal, because what will happen, think about this, if you had like a bunch of pancakes, blood sugar is going to go really high. Also, digestion is going to suck. It's not going to be very good. Blood sugar is going to go really high, and you're going to have a big crash. Later in the ride, you're going to feel like crap. So eating smaller amounts is always is what I would do. So, I mean, it's fun. It's a really fun thing. Like, if you've never done Ride the Rockies, it's super fun. Definitely get the pancakes. Just eat a smaller amount. Because if you eat a bunch, you're going to pay for it later. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, in that situation, I mean, it's a social ride. It's fun. It's beautiful. Enjoy the things out there. Yeah, for sure. In your training, though, in your training rides, don't stop for pancakes. Stick to the nutrition plan, because you're stabilize that blood sugar. That's the goal during our ride. Yeah, good question. All right, guys. So I think that's about it for today. We are having one more next weekend. Next Sunday at 4, I'm going to do a review of base training, intervals training, blood sugar regulation, food periodization, strength training, food timing. I'll try to just breeze through it, and then we can do some questions, and you can take notes and whatever. Yes, sir.
Quick question, your email address again?
Yeah, so my last name, acuna.steve@gmail.com. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it.